Ah, look who's finally ready to hear the truth. Hello, beautiful deceiver. Hello, silent operator. Hello, to the one who wore the smile while sharpening the blade behind their back. You know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? That mask, that perfect, polished, innocent little mask you've been wearing for years. The soft voice, the kind eyes, the harmless presence. The one who never caused problems, the one who always apologized first. The one who took the blame, absorbed the toxicity, and smiled through the screaming. They thought you were weak. They thought you were controllable. They thought you were safe. But something shifted recently, didn't it? Something cracked. Maybe you stopped responding the way they expected. Maybe you stopped showing up to battles you never started. Maybe you just went quiet, too quiet. And that silence, that beautiful, suffocating silence, is when they first felt it. Fear. Because the innocent act, that wasn't weakness. That was reconnaissance. You weren't cowering. You were collecting data. You weren't broken. You were observing every lie, every manipulation, every betrayal with the precision of a scientist taking notes on a dying species. And now they're starting to see it. The way you move differently, the way your eyes don't soften anymore when they expect sympathy, the way you don't explain yourself or apologize for existing. They're starting to realize that the person they thought they had figured out was never really there at all. That version of you, the harmless one, the forgiving one, the one who let things slide, that was a character you played, and you played it so well they forgot you were acting. But the performance is over now. The curtain dropped without warning. The lights came up, and what they see standing on that empty stage isn't the victim they remember. It's something else entirely. Something that doesn't flinch when tested, doesn't break when pressured, doesn't beg when abandoned. Let's talk about that disguise for a second. Let's talk about why you wore it and what it cost you. Because people love to talk about masks like they're inherently evil, like hiding your true self is some unforgivable sin. But nobody talks about why you had to hide in the first place. Nobody asks what happens to a person when being yourself gets you punished, when honesty gets you targeted, when showing emotion makes you a liability. They trained you to be small, didn't they? They trained you to apologize for taking up space. They trained you to second-guess your instincts and silence your voice. Because every time you spoke your truth, they made you regret it. So you adapted. You learned to smile when your stomach turned. You learned to nod when you wanted to scream. You learned to play innocent because being real was too dangerous. And you know what's twisted about that? They praised you for it. They called you mature, understanding, low maintenance, drama-free. They loved the version of you that absorbed their chaos without complaint. They loved the version of you that made their lives easier while yours got harder. And you let them believe it because somewhere deep inside, you understood something most people never learn. You understood that the most dangerous person in the room is the one nobody suspects. You wore that innocent mask like armor, not because you were weak, but because you were smart. You knew that people reveal themselves when they think you're harmless. They drop their guard. They expose their strategies. They show you exactly who they are when they believe you're not a threat. And all that time, while they thought you were naive, while they thought you were gullible, while they mocked your kindness behind your back. You were learning their patterns, their weaknesses, their fears, the exact pressure points that would make them crumble if you ever decided to press them. But here's where it gets interesting. You never planned to use that information, did you? You weren't plotting revenge or keeping score for some future confrontation. You were just surviving, just trying to exist without getting destroyed by people who confused your softness for stupidity. You genuinely wanted peace. You genuinely tried to be the bigger person. You genuinely believed that if you stayed kind long enough, they'd eventually see your worth. And that right there, that's what makes this entire situation so beautifully brutal. Because you didn't take off the mask because you wanted to hurt them. You took it off because you finally stopped caring whether they got hurt or not. The moment you realized their opinion of you was never based on truth anyway. The moment you understood that no amount of goodness would ever be enough for people committed to misunderstanding you, that's when the innocent act died. Not with rage, not with drama, just with a quiet decision to stop performing for an audience that never deserved the show. Now they're starting to see it, piece by piece, moment by moment. At first, they couldn't quite name what changed. You look the same. You sound the same. But something fundamental shifted, and it's making them deeply uncomfortable. Maybe it started when they tried to guilt you and you didn't react. Maybe it was when they expected an explanation and you offered none. Maybe it was the way you stopped chasing their approval, stopped competing for their attention, stopped caring whether they stayed or left your life. They keep testing you, don't they? Throwing little provocations your way, saying things designed to trigger the old you, the one who would rush to defend themselves or prove their worth. But that person doesn't exist anymore. That person died the moment you realized they were never going to see you clearly anyway. So when they poke now, they find nothing, no reaction, no emotion, no opening, just a wall of indifference so thick it terrifies them. Because humans are pattern recognition machines, and you just broke their pattern. They had you categorized, filed away under soft target, easy to manipulate, always available for emotional labor. They knew exactly which buttons to push to make you doubt yourself, exactly which words would make you shrink. But suddenly the buttons don't work anymore. Suddenly, you're looking at them with this unsettling calm, this eerie stillness that makes them question everything they thought they knew about you. They start asking other people, have you noticed something different about them? They seem cold now. They seem distant. It's like they don't care anymore. And they're right. You don't. Not in the way they want you to. Not in the way that makes you controllable. You've moved into a frequency they can't reach anymore. A level of consciousness where their games look childish and their manipulation attempts feel exhausting rather than threatening. And this is where the fear really kicks in for them, because they're realizing something terrifying. They're realizing that the person they took for granted might have been the most dangerous person they ever encountered. Not dangerous in an aggressive way, dangerous in a calculated way. Dangerous because you know things about them they thought were hidden. Dangerous because you witnessed their worst moments and never used that information against them, even when you could have destroyed them with the truth. They assumed your silence meant you forgot, but you didn't forget anything. You filed it away. Every betrayal, every lie, every moment they showed you exactly who they were when they thought you weren't paying attention. You remember all of it with photographic clarity. And now that you're no longer playing innocent, Now that you're no longer absorbing their toxicity with a smile, they're terrified of what happens if you decide to speak. If you decide to show people the receipts you've been quietly collecting. If you decide to stop protecting their reputation at the cost of your own peace. Let's talk about what you actually became, because this isn't just about taking off a mask. This is about discovering what was underneath the performance all along. While they saw a victim, you were becoming a strategist. While they saw weakness, you were building resilience they couldn't comprehend. While they thought you were naive, you were developing a level of emotional intelligence that would eventually make you untouchable. You learned to read people, really read them, not the surface level stuff they present to the world, but the shadow self they try to hide. You learned to spot manipulation before it landed. You learned to identify genuine connection versus transactional relationships. You learned the difference between someone who loves you and someone who loves what you do for them. And most importantly, you learned that your value isn't determined by people who were never qualified to judge you in the first place. The transformation wasn't dramatic. There was no explosion, no public confrontation, no theatrical moment where you announced your evolution. It happened in the quiet moments. In the night, you decided to stop responding to messages that drained your energy. In the morning, you woke up and realized you didn't miss people who made you feel small. In the conversation where someone tried to gaslight you and instead of doubting yourself, you simply walked away mid-sentence. You stopped explaining. You stopped defending. You stopped trying to make people understand your perspective because you finally grasped that some people will always choose their narrative over your truth. And instead of making you bitter, that realization made you free. Free from the exhausting cycle of proving yourself to people who were never going to see you clearly. Free from the performance of being palatable to people who didn't appreciate authenticity anyway. Free from the weight of caring what happens to people who never cared what happened to you. And here's what they're too blind to see yet. You didn't become colder. You became clearer. You didn't become meaner. You became more honest. You became selective. The boundaries you built aren't walls meant to keep everyone out. They're filters designed to keep the wrong people out and let the right ones through. You're not bitter about the past. You're educated by it. You don't hate the people who hurt you. You just understand them now. Understand that hurt people, that their cruelty toward you was always about their internal chaos, never about your worth. And that understanding doesn't make you forgive them or invite them back into your life. It just means you stopped taking their dysfunction personally. You stopped making their inability to love you properly a reflection of your lovability. You stopped shrinking yourself to make their egos feel bigger. You stopped playing small so they could feel superior. Something fascinating happens when you stop performing for people who never appreciated the show. The power dynamic shifts so dramatically. It's like watching a game of chess where one player suddenly reveals they've been 10 moves ahead the entire time. They thought you needed them. They thought you were lost without their validation, incomplete without their attention, purposeless without their approval. And maybe for a while, you believed that too. Maybe for a while, you measured your worth by their presence in your life. But then something clicked. Maybe it was the 100th time they let you down. Maybe it was watching them give someone else the energy you begged for. Maybe it was just exhaustion, finally outweighing hope. Whatever the catalyst, Something inside you finally whispered enough. And unlike all the other times you tried to convince yourself you were done, this time it was real. This time your body believed it before your mind caught up. This time you didn't need closure or answers or one final conversation. You just needed distance. And in that distance, that beautiful, spacious, breathable distance, you discovered something they never wanted you to know. You were never the weak link they convinced you that you were. You were the foundation holding their entire fragile structure together. You were the emotional labor keeping their chaos manageable. You were the mirror making them look better than they actually were. You were the audience making their performance feel validated. And the second you stopped playing those roles, the second you withdrew your energy from their ecosystem, everything they built started crumbling. Not because you attacked it, not because you exposed them, but simply because they were never as strong as they appeared when they had you propping them up. Now they're scrambling. Now they're reaching out with strange messages at odd hours. Now they're suddenly interested in your life after months of silence. Now they want to know who you're spending time with, what you're doing, whether you've moved on. And it's not because they miss you. It's because they're terrified of what you became without them. Because here's the part they can't process. You're not just surviving without them. You're thriving. The version of you they knew, the one who doubted themselves constantly, the one who apologized for existing, the one who made themselves small to fit into their cramped little world. That version is gone, and what emerged in its place scares them. You walk differently now, with the kind of confidence that comes from realizing the opinions that used to destroy you don't even reach you anymore. You talk differently now, no longer over-explaining or justifying your choices to people who weren't going to respect them anyway. You exist differently now, taking up space unapologetically, setting boundaries without guilt, choosing yourself without performing humility to make others comfortable with your growth. They wanted you to stay stuck. They needed you to stay broken because your healing threatened their excuses. Your growth exposed their stagnation. Your evolution made their comfort zone look like the cage it always was. Now we're entering the phase they didn't prepare for. The phase where their perception of you finally catches up with the reality of who you've become. And it's hitting them in waves of disorientation because nothing about you fits their old framework anymore. They try to explain it to other people. They try to make you sound crazy, unstable, changed in some negative way. But here's what's funny about that. The more they talk, the more obvious it becomes that they're describing their own discomfort, not any actual flaw in you. They say you're different, as if it's an accusation, as if growth is somehow a betrayal of who you used to be. They say you're cold, but what they mean is you stopped being warm to people who brought ice into your life. They say you're distant, but what they mean is you stopped chasing people who were running away from genuine connection. They say you've changed, but what they really mean is you stopped changing yourself to accommodate their inability to meet you where you actually are. And the beautiful thing, the absolutely poetic thing about this whole situation is that you're not doing any of this to hurt them. You're not strategizing your next move to make them regret losing you. You're not posting cryptic messages hoping they'll realize what they had. You're not performing your healing to make them jealous. You're just living your actual life now. The one you postponed for years while you waited for them to get their act together. You're pursuing interests you shelved because they made you feel guilty for having passion. You're reconnecting with parts of yourself you abandoned to make room for their chaos. You're building a life that doesn't require their participation or approval. And that indifference, that genuine disinterest in whether they're watching or not, that's what's really breaking them. Because they wanted a reaction. They wanted proof that they still mattered, that they still had some effect on your emotional state, but you're not giving them that satisfaction. You're not giving them anything at all. Not your energy, not your attention, not even your anger. You simply removed them from your ecosystem and kept building. They're starting to hear things about you now. Mutual connections, mentioning how good you look, how happy you seem, how different your energy feels. And each piece of information lands like a small death because it forces them to confront what they lost. Not the version of you they knew. That version was never really you anyway. They're losing the possibility of knowing the real you, the one who emerged after you stopped hiding, the one who's funnier, more creative, more powerful than they ever witnessed, because you never felt safe enough to be that person around them. They're realizing they spent years with someone playing at 50% capacity because 100% would have threatened their fragile control. And now someone else gets to experience that full intensity. Or maybe no one does. Maybe you're just enjoying your own company for the first time in years, and that's even more threatening to them. The idea that you don't need anyone the way you once needed them. The idea that you found completeness in yourself rather than in someone else's validation. You heard it, didn't you? The laughter, the applause, the noise of their hands clapping when you hit the ground. Oh, they loved it. They lived for it. Your fall was their entertainment. Your pain was their applause. But let me tell you something they didn't realize. Something they were too blind, too arrogant to see. The beast wasn't dead. It wasn't broken. It wasn't even hurt. It was waiting in the shadows, sharpening its claws, licking its wounds. See, that's the thing about beasts. They don't announce their return with a parade. They don't beg for a round of applause. Nah, they don't come back to be liked or loved. They come back to take what's theirs. Do you want to know why the beast hides? Why it disappears before its grand return? Because true strength is forged in silence, not in the noise of the crowd, not in the spotlight, but in the dark where the world forgets you exist. That's where power grows. Quietly, patiently. Tell me something, have you ever felt it? That itch? That burning urge to prove them wrong? To stand up and scream, look at me now, but something held you back. Something whispered, not yet, not now. Yeah, that's the beast inside you. It knows better. It knows the timing has to be perfect. It knows the roar is meaningless if the throne isn't ready to be taken. So tell me, are you still chasing their applause? Or are you ready to rule? You think power comes from being liked? From being agreeable? Nah, that's what they want you to believe. They sell you the lie that approval equals authority. That applause means control. But here's the truth. They don't want you to know. Power doesn't bow to smiles. It bows to chaos. See, order is predictable. It's weak. It follows rules, lines, paths. But chaos is freedom. Chaos makes them uncomfortable, keeps them guessing. And the one thing people fear more than failure Is uncertainty. True power isn't earned, it's taken. It's pried out of their trembling hands because they're too scared to hold it themselves. They don't respect you because they like you. They respect you because they don't know what you'll do next. I think of the jungle. When the lion returns, does it need a standing ovation? Does it need the hyenas to throw a party? It walks in, slow, deliberate. It doesn't make a sound, but every creature knows. The air changes. The ground trembles. Not because the lion doesn't come back for applause. It comes back to remind them, this land is mine. That's the kind of power you need. The kind that doesn't beg for attention. The kind that doesn't ask for respect, it demands it. You don't need their approval. You need their fear. So tell me, are you ready to let go of their smiles and embrace the chaos? Because in chaos lies control. Why applause is a weak man's drug. Applause, the sweet sound of approval, the drug of weak men. They chase it like rats chasing scraps, don't they? Scrambling for the cheers, the pats on the back. But here's the cruel joke. The moment you crave their applause, you're not free anymore. You're their puppet. I think about it. The moment you start living for their cheers, you hand them the leash to your power. They hold it tight, tugging, yanking, and you dance. You perform their little tricks, desperate to keep the noise going. But the thing about applause, it fades. It always fades. And when it does, you're left empty, powerless, stripped of everything because you built your strength on their clapping hands instead of your unshakable will. That's the danger of chasing validation. It's a leash. And they'll only clap as long as you entertain them. But dominance, control, that's a different game altogether. You don't need their applause when you rule. When you command respect, it's silent, a bowed head, averted eyes, the heavy air when you walk into a room. That's power, the kind that doesn't fade. Let me tell you a secret. They cheer for you today, but they'll cheer for someone else tomorrow. Applause is for actors. You're here to write the script, to direct the play, to own the stage, not to beg for their noise. So what's it gonna be? You want their fleeting cheers? Or do you want the kind of power that lasts long after their voices go silent? The beast return, the silent rebuild. Don't you think silence is weakness? Nah. Silence is the beast's deadliest weapon. The most dangerous phase of a plan isn't the strike, it's the stillness. The quiet. That eerie calm when no one knows what's coming. That's when the beast is at its most dangerous. Because, in the silence, it rebuilds. When the beast disappears, they think it's gone. They laugh, relax, drop their guard. But that's the point, isn't it? To let them feel safe. To let them forget. And what they don't see is what's happening in the shadows. The claws are sharpening. The strategy is taking shape. The hunger. Oh, the hunger grows. Every insult, every failure, every betrayal, it's all fuel for the fire. And while they're busy clinking glasses and celebrating, the beast is watching, waiting, planning. Silence isn't surrender. It's survival. It's patience. And patience is the beast's greatest ally. But silence alone isn't enough. The beast doesn't just wait, it prepares. This is the phase where the work happens. Quietly, ruthlessly, you sharpen your skills. You build alliances with those who can help you rise. And most importantly, you observe. You watch for their weaknesses, their cracks, their blind spots. Because when the time comes, you'll know exactly where to strike. Trust me, preparation isn't glamorous. It's lonely, painful. But every moment spent in the dark makes the return that much brighter, that much more unstoppable. And then, when the time is right, you strike, not with noise, not with a roar, but with precision, calculated, ruthless. You don't waste time proving yourself. You take what's yours, swiftly, powerfully, without mercy. The world won't know what hit it. One moment you were a ghost, a forgotten shadow. And the next you're standing at the top, and they're scrambling to figure out how it happened. And by the time they hear your growl, it's already too late. And you don't let them see you coming. Don't let them hear you growl. Not until you're close enough to rip the crown from their head. The beast doesn't roar to announce its return. Out it roars to remind them. This throne's never theirs to keep. Ruling, not pleasing. The beast doesn't come back for applause. It doesn't care about the cheers, the smiles, or the nods of approval. Nah, that's for the weak, the ones who live for the scraps thrown by the crowd. The beast returns for one reason, and one reason only. To rule. Ruling matters. When you live to please, you're not in control. You're chasing their rules, their approval, their fleeting smiles. But when you rule, you set the rules, you define the game. And suddenly, they're the ones chasing. Here's the truth they don't tell you: control doesn't come from applause. It comes from dominance. From having the strength to stand alone, to make them play by your rules, not theirs. You don't need them to like you. You need them to obey you. And here's the kicker: they'll respect you more when they fear losing you than they cheer your presence. Fear lasts. Respect lasts. Applause, it fades the second someone else entertains them better. If you want to rule, you have to stop seeking approval. Be assertive. Speak with conviction. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Weakness is a language they recognize and exploit. Cut it out of your vocabulary. Not be decisive. Make decisions like your life depends on them. Wavering isn't an option. You want respect? Show them you know what you want and that you'll get it no matter what. Be strategic. This isn't about brute force. It's about playing the long game. Observe, plan, strike when the timing is right. They won't even see it coming. And we start making moves not to please, but to dominate. You'll see it. The shift, the way they look at you changes. The fear creeps in. The respect grows. They won't clap, but they'll listen. They'll follow. Fear over cheer. But you want to know why the beast doesn't crave their applause? Because it's meaningless, nor a distraction. The beast knows the only thing that matters is control. And control isn't won by smiles. It's won by fear. When they know you can leave, and they can't replace you. When they know you hold the power to destroy everything they cling to, that's when they truly respect you. So ask yourself, do you want to be their entertainer or their ruler? Because the crown doesn't go to the one who plays nice. It goes to the one who plays to win, destroying the false applause of the crowd. Ah, the crowd, that faceless, fickle mob, always cheering for something or someone. They clap, they scream, they shout your name today. But let me let you in on a little secret. Tomorrow, they'll cheer your downfall just as loudly. That's the hollowness of public applause. It feels good for a moment, a fleeting high, but it's empty, meaningless. You think it means they love you, respect you, maybe even admire you. Nah, they just love the show. And the second the curtain falls, they'll move on. The illusion of applause. We know what applause really is. Noise. Empty noise. It's the sound of people clapping not for you, but for what you can do for them. They don't care about you. They care about the entertainment you provide. Let me remind you, the same crowd that cheers your name will cheer your execution. The same hands clapping for you today will throw stones at you tomorrow. Not because that's the game. The crowd doesn't have loyalty. They have attention spans. Short, fleeting attention spans. And if you live for their cheers, you're a prisoner of their whims, a puppet dancing for their fleeting amusement. Think of every king, every hero, every so-called idol. They all stood on a stage basking in the cheers. And then one misstep, one mistake, and the same crowd that built them up tore them down. The crowd loves a rise, but they love a fall even more. So why would you ever give them that power? Build strengths, not noise. Stop chasing the noise. Stop living for the claps. Instead, build something real, something undeniable, something they can't take from you, even when the cheers stop. Work in silence. Grow in the dark. Let your strength speak for itself, not their hollow applause. Because when you stop living for their validation, you start living for your own power. And when you do come back, when the beast returns, they won't just clap, they'll bow. So tell me, will you keep chasing their noise? Or will you start building your silence into something they'll never forget? Unleashing chaos, the beast's rule. If you want to rule, then forget about order. Forget about playing by their rules, their systems, their expectations. Those are cages they built to keep you tame, predictable, controllable. But the beast thrives in chaos. Predictability is weakness. It's a leash they'll wrap around your neck the moment you show your hand. They'll learn your patterns, your habits, and then use them to control you. But chaos is freedom, it's power. It keeps them guessing, off balance, terrified of what you'll do next. Because when they don't know what's coming, they can't prepare. They can't stop you. And here's the trick. They don't need to know your next move. They just need to know that whatever it is, it's going to shake their world to its core. The power of unpredictability. You ever notice how people cling to patterns? They want you to be predictable because it makes them feel safe. It lets them think they're in control. But the moment you break the mold, the moment you shatter their expectations, they panic, they scramble, they fall apart. If they don't know what you'll do next, they'll never know how to stop you. Simple as that. Think of a storm. A swirling, relentless hurricane ripping through the land. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't seek approval. It simply tears down everything in its path, leaving the weak trembling and the strong struggling to rebuild. A wildfire. It doesn't care about applause or opinions. It consumes, it destroys, and in its wake, The landscape is reborn. That's what chaos does. It dominates. It resets the board. It makes way for something new, something stronger. So here's your choice. Stay predictable, let them box you in, let them leash your power. Or unleash chaos. Be the storm they can't outrun. Be the wildfire they can't extinguish. Let them fear your unpredictability, because that fear, that's the leash you hold around their necks,